All right, today's notes are over Essential Question 21, which is over presidential succession, which is just a fancy way of saying, how do we get a new president if the old president isn't coming back? So as I was just saying, presidential succession is the plan for when we have a president who is leaving the office, not from an election, but for another reason. And so this presidential vacancy, we don't have a president, must be filled. To succeed somebody means to take their place. So presidential succession is just saying someone has to take the place of the former president who has left the office. Now, what are the reasons that a president would leave office in the middle of his term? Obviously, one of them is the president dies. If someone dies, they are not coming back. If a president dies, we need to fill that role. Also, if a president quits, or we say resigns from office, they decide they don't want to be president anymore, we would also have to fill the hole in the presidency. The final reason why there may be a vacancy in the White House is the president has been impeached and found guilty. You can see here in the notes that we have had 9 presidential vacancies in our country's history. 8 of those have been from the president dying. 1 of those from a president resigning, which was Richard Nixon. And we have never had a president be kicked out of office because they were impeached and found guilty. We had that on our last unit. So where does presidential succession come from? The Constitution did not fill the position of president in its original form. All it said was that the vice president would take on the powers of the president. But originally, we were going to call the vice president. He would still get vice president's pay. He would not become the president. However, we never followed this. The first time we had a president die in office, the vice president who took on the president's duties was immediately called Mr. President and was treated as the president. And that is the way we continued. However, in 1947, we decided to make it more official, and we passed something called the Presidential Succession Act. And this set up the order of who would take over if our president died, or more specifically, who would take over if the president and vice president both passed away, or if even further down the line passed away. And then after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, we passed the 25th Amendment to put the order that was created by the Presidential Succession Act of 1947 into a more permanent state. And so now we have the order of who will take over for president pretty much permanently entrenched in our Constitution. So what did the 25th Amendment set up? Well, it set up for the order of succession that if the president dies or resigns or is removed from office, the vice president becomes president. And you can see here in this picture, if Donald Trump were to leave office, J.D. Vance would be next in line. However, if both of them were to leave office at the same time, either through death or both quitting at the same time or a double impeachment and found guilty, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, would become President of the United States. Now, when Mike Johnson became president, everybody just doesn't move up one more spot. He would become president, he would pick his own vice president, and the House of Representatives would choose a new speaker. If somehow Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Mike Johnson were all to leave office at the same time, the president pro tempore of the Senate, the longest serving member of the Senate, would become president of the United States. That is currently this man seen here, Chuck Grassley. And the same as with Mike Johnson, if Trump, Vance, and Johnson were to all leave office at the same time, Chuck Grassley would become the president, and he would choose a new vice president. The House of Representatives would choose a new speaker, and whoever the current longest-serving senator is would become the new president pro temp of the Senate. The fifth position, going down through the next, 10 to 12, are the order. It is the president's cabinet in the order those positions were created. And the first position created in the president's cabinet back under George Washington's tenure was the Secretary of State. Our current Secretary of State seen here is Marco Rubio. He is fifth in line to be President of the United States. There are 15 to 16 cabinet positions, depending on if we lose the Department of Education soon. And you can see the order here in the order they were created. Everybody that is a member of the cabinet is in line to be the president, depending on if the people in front of them were to all leave office at the same time. Now, you might ask yourself, what if all of these people were to die at the same time in a giant explosion or something like that? Our government makes sure that won't happen, in that these people are never in the same room together at one time, except for once a year, and that's during the State of the Union address that the president gives every January. However, one of the members of the cabinet is always put in a secure location, so if somehow there was an attack and all of our members of the government were killed, we would have one person hidden away who would become president of the United States, and we would have a leader to lead us through that difficult time. The final part of the notes here goes over a different term called presidential disability. And just like presidential succession was the president needs to be succeeded because he is not coming back, presidential disability is the idea that the president is injured or unable to fulfill his duties, but he could come back. Like a disability doesn't mean that you're gone. It just means that you have something you need to overcome. So presidential disability would be if the president were to get shot and he's not dead, but he's in a coma. Until the president can do his duty, the vice president would act as the president, and they would hold down the job until the president could come back. Once the president can come back, he would tell Congress he's able to do his duties, and Congress would tell the president, you're the president once again. We famously used this in the 1980s when President Reagan was shot and in a coma, and President Bush had to act as the president until he was healthy again. But we've used it many times since then for things such as, I think Barack Obama had a knee surgery. I know George Bush went to the dentist and had to be put under for a root canal. Anytime the president isn't able to do his job because for whatever reason he is incapacitated, the vice president takes control of the country until the president is back. And the final part here just reminds you that part of the 25th Amendment, which sets up this order of succession, also says that whoever is chosen as the new president gets to pick their own vice president, but they have to be confirmed by Congress. That's it. With the rest of this day, you have a worksheet that the sub is going to give you. And so on that worksheet, you have 10 starts to sentences. I believe one of them says President Donald Trump. What you have to do is finish that sentence as many times as you can with different information we have had in our notes both yesterday and today. So for the first one, you could say President Donald J. Trump is the 47th president of the United States. We had that in our notes yesterday. You could also say President Donald J. Trump was inaugurated on January 20th, 2025. Every sentence you have to have one for each of the 10 answers. But if you do extra, you get extra credit for them. So the more you can do, the better. All right, good luck.